Solomon, the king of Israel, was the son of David. He is said to be one of the wisest kings to have ever lived. Let's take a quick peek into history to know what really happened, how Solomon was endowed with such godly wisdom, and tried to crack the code to Solomon-like wisdom. Solomon loved the Lord. He followed all the decrees of his father, King David. One day, King Solomon sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings at a place called Gibeon. That very night, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream and asked him, "What do you want? Ask and I will give it to you." Solomon replied, "You showed great and faithful love to my father, and you have continued to show the same love today by giving him a son to sit on his throne." He then humbled himself and said, "Lord, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around. Here I am in the midst of your people, so great and numerous that they cannot be counted." Solomon then goes on to present his request to God. He said, "Give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. Who by himself can govern this great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom. He said, "Because you have asked for wisdom and not long life or wealth or the death of your enemies, I will give you what you asked for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart such as no one else has had or ever will have." But the Lord doesn't stop with what Solomon had requested. He added on to it and said, "I will also give you what you did not ask for, riches and fame. No other king in all the world will be compared to you for the rest of your life. And if you follow me and obey my decrees and commands as your father David, I will give you a long life." This is how God himself endows divine wisdom to King Solomon, which was reflected clearly in the king's judgment and the way he handled the kingdom's matters. People were in awe of the king, for they saw the wisdom God had given Solomon for rendering justice. He was also handpicked by God to build the majestic Jerusalem temple, whose dimensions and every minute detail were designed by God himself. Now, what can we learn from King Solomon? In short, let's recollect what all Solomon did. He lived a godly life, offered God sacrifices, recounted God's faithful love, admitted his shortcomings, talked about his challenges, and placed his request with reason. After that, what did God do for Solomon? He granted Solomon a wise and understanding heart, and as a bonus, riches and fame, and as a conditional blessing, long life. The condition being following God and obeying his decrees and commands. More importantly, what can each of us do to obtain wisdom? Do we need to offer sacrifices too, like Solomon did? Here's an interesting verse, 1 Samuel 15:22. What is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of rams. The Lord loves obedience. He doesn't expect any great sacrifices, and this obedience doesn't have to be forced. It should flow in our actions naturally if we really love the Lord. Take a look at this verse, 1 John 5:3. Loving God means keeping his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. Do we need to wait for God to appear in our dreams too? Actually, God has already given us a huge provision in his word to obtain wisdom. Look at this verse, James 1:5. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. And it goes on to say in verse 6, but when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver. See, there's a huge promise right there in God's Word, waiting to be inherited by those who trust God and ask Him. But is it enough to just ask for wisdom? We should seek for wisdom, really want it, more than anything else in the whole wide world. Proverbs 2:2-4 says, "Tune your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures." Wow! And when we really crave to attain this godly wisdom, who grants it? The Lord does. Not only wisdom, but also knowledge, understanding, and common sense. So, what are you waiting for? Start cracking the wisdom code today.